Namaskar. Hello and welcome to PGurus channel. I'm your host Sri Iyer. Today I have a young Hindu warrior who is going to be gracing our channels. Those of you who are planning to go abroad for studies, this video is for you as to what to expect, and for the parents, this is for you so that you know how to prepare the minds and souls of your children. Your hard-earned savings need to be put to use in the right way, and what to expect. There is a lot of vile language, a lot of hatred, Hinduphobia out there in the Western campuses. That doesn't mean that the quality of education there is any less. The point here is how to not only survive but thrive in these campuses. So to understand the implications, the atmosphere, what is really happening, I would like to introduce my guest of the day, SammyVada. Sammy, namaskar and welcome to PGurus channel.
Namaskar. How are you? How are you doing this morning?
I'm doing well, Sammy, and it's a really hot summer this year, and I've never had so many AC days, but it is really hot. How's it in your neck of the woods?
Oh man, it's hitting high 110s, 107s. So it's hotter than it's ever been. But
Yes. Especially if you have concrete jungles and like downtowns are extremely hot. It radiates off of the heat. So,
right.
Sammy, I'm going to start today's conversation with a video that Hindu on Campus put out. And this video has garnered over 800,000 views. But we are going to take apart the comments that came on that video. And let's first start looking at the video. Here, can we have the video, please?
I should be able to speak about Hinduphobia without any fear of backlash, ridicule, and threats.
Hare Krishna. I want the appropriation of my culture by Western industries to end.
I want South Asian studies departments to stop denying Hinduphobia, spreading insidious myths about Hinduism, and gaslighting my people.
I want the mainstream media to stop showing a one-sided story of the past and present that diminishes the pain of Hindu persecution.
I want hate crimes against Hindus and Hindu places of worship in Canada, the US, the UK, Pakistan, Afghanistan, Bangladesh, and India to be spoken about.
I want to be able to practice Dharma without fearing for its future.
To be Hindu is to adhere to the values of benevolence, self-control, and enlightenment. The rituals and traditions that bring me closer to my ancestors and the divine are source of comfort for me.
I'm a proud Hindu student.
I am a proud Hindu student.
I am Hindu and I'm here to stay. Namaste, Om Shanti.
So, Sammy, take it away and walk us through what happened after this video aired. And I just want you to set the stage for people who are sitting some thousands of miles away, sending their children, spending their hard-earned savings, thinking that their child is going to get a better future in the West. Well, maybe yes, but the point here is how to arm them with information and fact. Take it away. The floor is yours.
Sure. Thank you so much. So, unfortunately, what we've seen over the last 5 years are institutions, academic institutions, trying to create pipelines. So while they will provide good education opportunities here, unfortunately, what they also are looking to do is to create anti-Hindu and anti-Indian like agents in a sense, right? So that they can work. India and America, like our relations are complicated, and we can see geopolitical sort of rivalries taking place, and I think it manifests in the anti-Hindu bigotry that takes place in academic institutions. So what you saw there was a very, I would say, cold take video. We want Hinduphobia to be recognized. We want South Asian departments to stop undermining instances of Hinduphobia, and we want cultural appropriation to stop. Again, another instance of it. But what you saw there in the responses, I think, speak volumes, and we can go through it. And honestly, if there's one theme that I want to highlight to Indian parents, it is there is a deep sense of dishonesty. The conversation is fundamentally dishonest. And when we see dishonesty, moral inconsistency, I see that there is something sinister taking place. This isn't a misunderstanding. Well, you have your opinion and I have my political opinion and we can differ. No, this is sinister, right? When we can argue and we can talk when we both come from an honest place. And you'll find this out in the responses. So I have the presentation for you. We can go through some of those responses. By the way,
just before we jump into the slide deck, Sammy, make sure that your head's not getting cut off. A little bit lowering of the angle so that you get perfect. This way, this is good. Yeah, let's go with the slide deck now, please. Yeah, all yours.
Okay, so what we see here, first of all, let me just say that we posted this video on Instagram. Amazing responses. Instagram is where the young Hindu Americans are, the real people are. People like us and people who are wanting to be more politically involved, especially the professional managerial class, the professors, especially the ones who are perpetuating Hinduphobia, we're on Twitter. And so what we see on Twitter, obviously still largely positive response, but we got to see what the backlash looked like. What is the negative response? And you'll see that it was pure dishonesty. So let's look at this first one. Is Dalit phobia included in Hinduphobia, or is this just Brahmins whining away as usual? So you can already see the anti-Brahmin hate. First of all, how do you know any of us are Brahmin? How do you know what caste any of us are? Who are you to assume what caste we are in the first place? So what I recognize, and this is something you'll notice, even I know you've covered 𝙒𝙧𝙤𝙬𝙤 and Equality Labs many times. They'll call everyone a Brahmin. One of the former CEOs of Twitter, he wasn't Brahmin, but they called him a Brahmin and they demonized him as a Brahmin to undermine his ascension to being a Twitter CEO at the time. So I find this very, the same bigotry, the same assumptions that are baseless are still thrown at us as Hindus. Again, moral inconsistency. And I also want to tackle the first issue. Is Dalit phobia included in Hinduphobia? Of course it is. Of course it is. And I know you covered the passing of I never got to meet him, but dear Milinji, the vitriol that he said, the Dalit phobia that he faced for speaking up as a Hindu American. Of course, we stand in solidarity with people like Milinji.
Sammy, I just want to add something to what you just mentioned. Viewers, something terrible happened just before Milinji collapsed. Now, this meeting finished in the Cupertino City Council. Everybody was trooping out, and a couple of people essentially wanted to physically assault him, Milin, and he was so shaken up. And a couple of other people stepped in. In fact, there's one city council member who was witness to all these things. I don't know if this is going to go further because there was an attempt to try and assault him, and this is something that is still being mulled over. I don't want to share too many details here, but these people who have tried to assault him, they are, they know what happened, because Milin walked from there, and then just a few feet down, he just said, I'm feeling dizzy. He sat down, he drank a sip of water, and he just collapsed. And he couldn't. They could not revive him. In a few hours, he had passed away. So this is a direct consequence of what happened. I just wanted to share that. That's far I had not said this thing before, because this is something that is very, very saddening. We just can't believe, man. Milin was such a great, indefatigable fighter. And it's really, really sad. When you mentioned it, I thought I should tell this to all the viewing public. Viewers, come on now, 100 viewers for this. This is so important. This is your future, guys. Please like this video so that this message goes out to more people, and we have many more people watching this. Over to you, Sammy.
Thank you for sharing that information. I wasn't aware of that. And, when we talk about, this is what we talk about. And so Dalit phobia is absolutely a part of Hinduphobia. And what they don't want to talk about, what they like to deflect, is that the casteism is our responsibility. No, it's on you too. And what we witnessed with, we knew that there was such a, things being thrown at him, insults being thrown as he was making his way down the steps, that really shook him up. So again, the hypocrisy is, I think, the bottom line, and trying to distract the issue. Of course, we stand with our Dalit brothers and sisters, and and so Dalit solidarity is a part of Hindu solidarity, and we've always maintained that, and that's what Veer Savarkar maintained. And so yeah, anyway, so this is sort of the hypocritical responses you'll get. Let's go to the next one. So this one I found really interesting. If you're facing so much of what you call Hinduphobia in Christian countries, why not come to Hindu paradises like UP and enjoy the Hindu Rashtra life? No one is forcing you to stay in God. So I find this really interesting. This is a form of erasure identity. We are Indian Americans. We are Hindu Americans. I'm as proud of being Hindu first. I'm also proud being American. I speak English. English is my first language. And I have an identity to be deserved in the United States. And so when you have people like this looking to erase the Hindu American identity as if it shouldn't exist, and that if I want to be proudly Hindu, I should just go back to my country, it's very, very telling. It is a form of xenophobia. And it encourages, it's telling Americans to be scared of your Hindu neighbors. That is the subtext of tweets like this. And again, you'll find what I call very reactionary responses, very bigoted responses when it comes to the very, very baseline request from young Hindu Americans to just be visible and for Hinduphobia to be recognized. And yet you'll have people like this telling us to go back to our country, go back to India. And I'm telling, and I think this is important for kids. You want to send your kid here for educational opportunities, they will be told the same thing by Americans. Go back to your country. The left will tell you to go back to your country. You're not welcome here as an immigrant. And so, this is, again, the same rhetoric that they usually speak against is what they champion against Hindus, because hypocrisy and Hinduphobia. So that's one of the points I wanted to serve. Let's go to the next one. I found this one really interesting. Compared to the extremely soft tones, slogans of Hindu nationalists of the UK, Canada. So they try to say that we act a different way because we're a minority versus Indians and Hindus in India. And so again, like to be able to compare the politics, I think is such a dishonest framing. Look, as we understand, what makes the concept of being Sanatani, what makes Hindus so important is that we are a collection of minority identities. I speak Telugu. I'm a proud Telugu, Telugu Hindu. Sri Iyer, you have a little mixed background, your Tamil background, but you grew up in Hyderabad, is that correct?
Oh yeah. I can speak fluent Telugu.
Oh yeah, okay, perfect. So you have that very Bharatiya sort of perspective. Your ancestry comes from one part of India, but your life it was in another part. We have Punjabi Hindus, Haryanvi Hindus, UP, Gujarati, Marathi, and yet we've all found our solidarity, regardless of our ethnic backgrounds, our jati backgrounds, our linguistic backgrounds, our theological backgrounds. Some of us are Shaivites, Vaishnavites, Smarta, Shaktas. We have our Ishta Devatas, we have our theology. Some of us are Advaita, some of us are atheists. But we all find solidarity in our Hindu-ness, our Hindu identity. And that's what makes us so powerful. And so when they try to push that and say that, oh, we're a minority here, or we're a majority there, we've made ourselves a majority in India because we found solidarity. And that's something we don't talk about. And this is the sort of dishonest conversations that often take place. And this is something that you'll have to arm your kids with, this knowledge such as this. It's to remember that, they will use politics of India against Hindus and make them apologetic for being Hindu in the United States.
Thank you. We have go ahead. Next one, please. Go ahead.
And this one, I just wanted to again talk about.
If you could just read out what they said first, so that people, it may be a little bit hard for us to read the text
no worries.
on a cell phone.
Yeah. So it says Hindu students abroad want to vehemently deny minorities of their own country. Of course, we don't want to deny. How do we want to deny anything? What did this video have to do with minorities in India? Whataboutism is one of the key rhetorical tools of Hinduphobes, is to just distract you from the issue. When I talk about on my Instagram, on my TikTok videos, when I talk about Pakistani Hindus and how they are treated in Sindh, the immediate comments are going to be, oh, what about Muslims in India? What about Christians? What about this? What about that? Whataboutism. And the reason why they use whataboutism is because they can't answer the questions that I'm posing. Why is it that Hindus are treated poorly in Pakistan? But they sort of, what we say, they all lives matter the issue. When I want to talk about a particular issue, they take up the space by moving the focus to something else. And this is a core tool of Hinduphobia, of anti-Hindu bigotry, is to distract the issue. And so one of the things that we have to be, what I want parents to be able to teach their kids, and what students coming to the US want to be aware of, is learning not to let that happen to you. If you're going to talk about, back home this happens to Hindus and I want to talk about it, assert your right to talk about it. Take your 𝙒𝙧𝙤𝙪𝙥𝙥 to talk about it, because that is your right. And people will try to make you feel bad that, oh, maybe you should be focusing on this, or maybe you should be focusing on that. And again, it's a dishonest rhetorical maneuver. It's called whataboutism. So again, these are just 4 of the responses. I believe this is the last one. There's one more. There's one more.
Yeah, go ahead. Yeah.
Okay, and this one I want to go into greater detail. This is Sonia Sikka. She is a professor, and we'll go into what she is, but she says there is no Hinduphobia. And if you really want to be a proud Hindu, fight caste discrimination and Hindutva violence against minorities in India. These are things that bring shame and destruction to the religion. Very condescending language here from Sonia Sikka. So we can go to the next slide real quick just to see. I have her. This is what her qualifications are. She's a professor. Again, philosophy department, University of Ottawa, philosophy of religion, multiculturalism, German philosophy. She holds power in institutions, and she uses condescending language like, if you're a Hindu, you would fight against caste discrimination and Hindutva violence. I want to make it real clear. She is an ex-Hindu. She has declared herself to be an atheist. That's fine. That's her personal choice. But she no longer gets to lecture me as a Sanatani, as a Hindu, of what I should do if I'm a proud Hindu. Of course I fight caste discrimination. I don't need you to tell me to fight against caste discrimination. But that doesn't take away from existing Hinduphobia, anti-Hindu bigotry, and indoctrination that takes place on American campuses. One of the things that she champions, she's actually against the Uniform Civil Code in India. Fun fact, she's written articles about this. She believes that, different religious groups should follow their own personal laws. And so it's very interesting because we know that there's problematic aspects in various personal codes as opposed to a uniform civil code. This, I think, is really important to understand because it's pure dishonesty. She has a specific hatred and a dislike for Hindus. She said there is no Hinduphobia, as if Pakistani Hindus don't exist, as if what took place in Manipur right now is not happening, or what's happening in Haryana is not happening. We don't have to go to the Indian subcontinent. In the United States, when we have absolute dishonest conversations about India and caste, when we have organizations like Equality Labs, these are clear instances of Hinduphobia. And I don't know if you've covered this yet, 𝙒𝙧𝙤𝙪𝙥𝙥, but in Australia, there was a Hindu neighbor and a Muslim neighbor, and this woman, the Muslim neighbor, she put, I don't actually want to describe it, it's very gross, but she desecrated the Shiva lingam of her Hindu neighbor. And then she did all sorts of atrocious things. It's actually quite gross if I get into the details, so I'll just spare everyone of it. But these are clear instances that they want to deny. And so what I want to say is that they are not our friends. The left is inhospitable to Hindus. And the reason why I say that, and I'm going to tell you something, you know this, I'll probably open up to the audience a little bit more. I grew up in the United States, being someone born and brought up in America. I grew up as a socialist. I was a strong socialist and a communist. And I know, and I think it's because, I grew up with dharmic values, 𝙒𝙗𝙬𝙁 𝙤𝙧𝙤𝙀. I really did see the world as one family, one world, one family. And I wanted to bring that empowerment to everyone. But in those spaces, in that pursuit of poverty alleviation, I found that these spaces demanded that I, quote unquote, dismantle my Hindu faith. What does that mean, dismantle? I find those to be fighting words. And ultimately the subtext being they want me to convert to a different religion. They want me to be atheist. They want me to be Christian. They want me to be Muslim. They want me to be anything but a Hindu. And that is the unfortunate reality that we're facing. And this is why, if you are coming into the United States, please find Hindu organizations to find solidarity with, to find that you're not alone in your Hindu identity. Because we're there and we can teach you how to navigate what will inevitably be a very hostile environment. So, anyways, I think so. I wanted to say, and I just, again, bottom line.
Let me ask you a follow-up on what you just said.
Yeah.
Let me ask you a follow-up on what you just said. I mean, if you could center yourself, you're just a little bit skewing to the right. Thank you. Thank you. Let me ask you a question. What made you change your mindset from a socialistic thing to become like, wait a minute, why are these people just taking pot shots at Hinduism? And see, our viewers, I want you to always remember at the back of your mind what 𝙒𝙧𝙤𝙪𝙥𝙥 has said again and again and again and again. Aunties and uncles, we are coming after you. What the heck are you meaning by that? I don't know what he means by that, but it has a lot of loaded implications. The question here is, probably a lot of our children growing up here are fighting with the same kind of, questions that you probably had. So tell us a little bit about the transformation when you changed from being very socialistic and not being very Hinduistic, and then suddenly finding, in US they call it, he found religion. So one-liner that is said. Yeah. So go ahead.
Yeah, sure. It's a great question. First, I think my delving into socialism in the first place comes from, even at the time when I didn't realize it, a very dharmic place. As Hindus, we believe in sarva sukhino bhavantu, right? Peace to all beings, right? Sukham to all beings, shamno dvipate, shamno chaturpate, right? Peace to all two-legged beings, peace to all four-legged beings. And so in many ways, it kind of, the ideals of socialism promise a lot of what our own Hindu scripture is talking about. What socialism is trying to promise, what Marx is trying to convey, is a society where maybe we can have that peace for all people. And so that's where I think I subconsciously fell into it. And in many ways, I still hold the humanistic principles of being a socialist. I still, when I see a homeless person on the streets, I still want to make sure that they're okay. I still want to make sure that they're fed and housed and have a decent, dignified life. And I think that we can still pursue that as Hindus. However, and this is the bottom line that I want to say, is that the spaces, I was a member of DSA, it's the Democratic Socialists of America. I worked on many socialist campaigns. What ultimately what the discourse started to be, and again, these are all Americans, these are white people who are being informed by organizations like Equality Labs about caste. And so they'll look to me and ask me, do I discount, or do I disapprove of the caste system? Do I denounce it? And I'm like, why are you asking me this? Are you, because I'm brown, because I'm visibly Hindu? Like, you now assume that I'm pro caste system? So these are the sort of questions that were always thrown my way that I frankly found to be racist. Let's be clear about it. That is a racist question to ask. But again, it's normalized when it comes to Hindus. Questions that, and ways that we treat Hindus in America, are ways that you would never see treatment for any other race or ethnic group or religion. And I want to make that clear. You can get away with saying very heinous things about Hindus in America without any fear that you couldn't say about any other ethnic group. And I think that exceptionalism is when I found out that when it comes to discourse on the left, it is dishonest. If there is a theme, a word that I want to convey to the audience that is watching, the conversation is dishonest. And if you pay attention, even in Indian politics, the way they cover it, it is dishonest, right? When they talk about Manipur violence, they cherry pick specific instances to make it look like it is the Hindus that are at fault. When they look at Haryana, it is the Hindus that are at fault. Whenever we see clashes between two groups, they always cherry pick instances of when Hindus are again, and I'll make this clear, they're fighting back. And so that dishonest conversation was something that I tried to push through, but ultimately found that my solace was leaving these spaces, was leaving the left. And I can still hold my principles of, humanism, but that is ultimately when I realized this was no longer happening. Equality Lab started posting videos saying that Hinduism is all just caste, and that it's all Brahmanical ideology, Brahmanical this, Brahmanical that. And then I study Indian history and I look at it from an honest perspective, and you find that that's not the case at all. And when you try to challenge these beliefs, the immediate response is you are a fascist. Fascist, fascist, fascist. Nazi, Hindutva, again, the buzzwords, RSS, BJP, Hindutva, fascist. These are the words that they want to use to make you ashamed of your Hindu identity. I'm not ashamed of my Hindu identity. I didn't let it happen to me. What I decided is that if I want to pursue my goals, objectives, I'm going to forge my own political corner. And that is my Hindu corner, on my Hindu-ness with other Hindu Americans just like me. And we've organized so many people. We had a convention down in Houston the other day. I was a proud speaker there. And the response was amazing. Young Hindu Americans are riled up. We see the dishonesty in this conversation. We are now looking to organize. We're now looking to educate. And we're gonna come back. And that's what's taking place here. So that's sort of the journey that I had.
Thank you so much. And I just wanted to preface and add a little bit more to what Sammy is saying. Look, most of us who are working in the United States, you came here to seek a better life. Then we put on our blinkers and said, okay, we have to give a good future for our children. So you work really, really hard. You excel at work. Then you settle down. You buy property, and then your children's timetable is mapped out from the time they turn 3. They said you shall do this, and then you shall apply for this college. You shall get into this, and so on and so forth. Well, the problem is in all these things, we don't have time to look at anything else happening around us. This is where you need to watch out. Today, things are not as they were maybe even 5 years ago. The moment your child steps out of your home and into a campus, that's when they get broadsided with this stuff. And the children, they grow up in a very sattvic environment. They are not ready. They're simply not ready to face the barrage of invective, abuse, verbal, every kind of way that comes their way. They are instantly targeted. This is where you have to really watch out. And this is where, Sammy and I, we are trying to tell you that, first of all, be aware, teach the children that it is pride that you should have when you are practicing Hinduism, Sanatana Dharma. There's a lot of misinformation out there, and these people, every time you face up to them and start challenging them, like Sammy says, they'll say you are a fascist, you are an RSS guy, you are a VHP guy, or this, you're that. This is where you need to really guard against. And I salute to all our parents who are working extra hard to put their children through a better system of education for a better future. But this problem, so first of all, you're getting broadsided at the campuses. Let's say you put your head down and you don't look at anything, study and come out. At workplace, if the SB 403 like laws are passed, you're going to be getting ambushed again.
Yep.
You cannot walk away from this, guys. You just cannot say that I don't have any problem. I am not getting discriminated. Therefore, I don't want to talk about it. You are being dragged and pulled into this. Not your choice. It's up to you to stand up and fight. You have to understand that this is the world that it has come to today. People are not very happy about the fact that many of us are brilliant at what we do. Brilliant. That's the only word I can say. This meritocracy is being, taken aim at.
Yeah.
Sammy, if you would like to add to that, because this is how I see it, my friend. So the next 20, 30 years, unless each and every Sanatani stands up and fights and pushes this thing back with data, fact, and actual, being the way you think you are, being the way you are, the way the Dharma teaches us to do. All it asks you is speak the truth, Satyam Vada, Dharman Charas, walk down the path of right. That's it. So please go ahead.
You know, I love the idea, and the idea of pride is so important. But here's the thing that I think we teach our sons and daughters, which is that the full conclusion, especially in the Kali Yuga, is that we are the whole text of the Vedas, the Puranas, the Itihas, is to teach us to be spiritual warriors, like our devas and devtas. I take Lord Shiva, for example. I said this in the speech. You know, Shiva is the Adi Yogi. He teaches us to have stability in the mind, civility in our speech, to be yogis, to be spiritual, you know? But he wields a trishul and a dhanush, right? His bow. He fights when he needs to fight. And every deity, from Hanumanji to Swami Ayyappa, Lord Shiva, every single one, you know, they are spiritual warriors, and we need to be spiritual warriors. And one of the long-term projects that I want to see in America is to start having self-defense training, especially because there's a rise in hate crimes. Hindus need to learn how to defend themselves physically. We need to be learning how to, you know, whether it's martial arts, and we have an ancient martial tradition to be proud of. You know, we need to have that element as well. And it's not just, you know, being able to be successful, you know, materially, which I think is important too, but also being spiritual, being yogic, but also being a fighter. And I mean that genuinely. And so one of the things I want to do is start opening up self-defense sort of programs and teaching people martial arts, you know, whether it's boxing, MMA, Muay Thai, Taekwondo. These things, these are practical skills that Hindu Americans need to start learning. And this is something I want to start teaching parents that are here, and I have kids that are growing up here to start engaging as well. Hinduism is a religion of spiritual warriors. By being a Sanatani, you are a spiritual warrior, and it's your dharma to cultivate both your spirituality and your warriorship. And that's something I always want to get across. And that's why you should be proudful. So...
Yeah, thank you so much, Sammy. And we have a few questions from our viewers. Clearly, we've really made an impact, because I see quite a few questions piling up. Let's go to the question and answer session, please.
Love it.
Pawan Kishore wants to know, good morning, SI and SV. Identifying a caste with name is a terrible idea. What will they do if a person changes his name to something which these woke folks classify as lower caste name?
You know, that's an interesting question. So I say don't change your name. You know, be proud of the last name that you have. You know, I say, you know, whether you want to be proud of your community, that's up to you. Caste, I don't necessarily agree with, but you know, when someone asks me what my caste is, I say my caste is Hindutva. It is Hindu-ness. Same answer Veer Savarkar did. I don't care about your caste identity. I don't care about your ethnic or linguistic or theological identity. You are Hindu first. Hindu solidarity above all. You know, one of the things that, you know, what the left, you know, especially people like Quality Labs, they're so, you know, out of touch, is that I'm involved in the grassroots level with Hindu Americans, people my age, across my state, across the United States. We're all of different castes, and you know, in a way, you know, Brahmins are a minority. You know, I found that the vast majority of them are people of every other caste, and they're proud Hindu Americans, and that's something that makes me very happy. This isn't, you know, the idea that we're all just a bunch of Brahmins and we're just saying this and that. It's such a lie, and so it's very interesting to me. But yeah, don't ever change your name. Be proud of the last name you have. That's your ancestral last name. That's been passed on to you for generations. They want to call you out, you fight back. Don't dodge the attacks. You know, stand up.
Yeah, Pawan, just to add to what Sammy said, see, this whole SB 403 and the other bills that are now doing the rounds in states like Oregon is all based on a flawed report. Yeah. This is done by Equality Labs, and the report, the authors were 𝙒𝙧𝙤𝙪𝙥𝙥 Soundararajan and a lady called Natasha Dar. Natasha Dar is a Pakistani American. She's a practicing Muslim. Her mother and her grandfather have a very historic, very anti-Hindu, anti-Indian bias. It's like it flows in their veins. So what do you think is going to come out of this? It's a flawed report. Plus, she tries to equate names as associated with caste. This stupid fool that 𝙒𝙧𝙤𝙪𝙥𝙥 Soundararajan is is a name that is used across the spectrum.
Yeah.
You stupid fool, you don't even know the history of your own last name.
Yeah.
And you want us to accept that? So this is the kind of stupidity that is there in the CRD, the California Rights Department. These people have burrowed themselves into the sand and they are thinking, we need a victory out of this. What victory are you going to get? You have a flawed report. This report has been rejected in a court of law. And you still want to pursue? This is the stupidity we are facing with extreme wokeness that has completely infested some of the departments in the government, especially in the state of California. I just wanted to lay the record right here. Let's go to the next question, please.
Yeah.
Rahul Rathod wants to know, even though Hindus are significant population and are affluent, they are deeply divided and never do tactical voting. Hindus first need to set their house right if they want to be influential in the West. Your views?
Is he talking about we're deeply divided in India? Is that I think is what he's
I think both India as well as in the West. The point I think he's trying to make is that we don't always or we don't ever agree on anything. Each one is pulling in a different direction. Sammy, you are probably in the middle of this thing. Talk to us a little bit about how you grow up around with all these dissonant voices, but everybody is still Hindu.
It's really interesting. So where I live, there's a significant Telugu population. And, what I've understood, this Telugu population, especially I think when they come to the West, they carry, I think the Hindu pride really emerges. A huge SammyVada temple right here. And they do a lot of that activity. The Hanuman temple, very politically involved, very pro-Hindu. And they're very political in that nature. What I realized, and unfortunately, the same sort of politics isn't reflected in Andhra, and I find that to be curious sometimes. So what I say, this is why we go back to 𝗤𝙧𝙤𝙬𝙤. He's honestly, 𝗤𝙧𝙤𝙬𝙤 is one of the most influential people when I talk to, who I read, because this was the same frustration that he had too. Hindus were divided in independent India, pre-independent India, as it is now, or we're a lot better now, and same here in America. So one thing, Rahul, and one thing that I also started learning, even though socialism isn't necessarily the way for me anymore, is that having that grassroots conversation and organizational building is very big. I say that there's a couple steps to this. Talk to your neighbors, talk to your chaiwala down the street, talk to them. Everyone you talk to, meet as many different people as you can wherever you are, especially if you're in India. Have these conversations. Build relationships with people you wouldn't otherwise necessarily talk to, and see where their heads at. Understand the landscape of your community, and then learn. Then you can start building bridges. Understand how we can use instances of hate crimes against Hindus, how we can use anti-Hindu bigotry of the media and of the West to start educating and awakening Hindus. And I hope this, what we've done today, this program has done a lot to understand that the Western institutions are very repulsed at the idea of Hindus acknowledging bigotry against Hindus. And that alone should start awakening Hindus. So if there's one thing I'd love to do, and when I go to India, I want to do that myself, is just talk to your average person. Talk to your neighbors, talk to your friends, talk to your family, talk to random people on the streets, and just see where their head's at with all of this, and see what are their concerns, and how can we bridge Hindu pride and Hindu identity into their everyday concerns, because people have everyday lives to live. So that's something that we should do. That Hindu solidarity, Hindutva, Hindu-ness is something that we need to start, we need to continue building wherever we are in our communities. So that's the best advice that I've, and that's sort of the tactic that I've taken here in the West.
Next question, please. Pawan Kishore wants to know, how do you counter a woke who labels you a fascist for speaking the truth? Fascists and nationalists are different.
Love this question. I've obviously they call me a fascist. Fascism has a political scientific definition, and I'll tell you, man, I'll expose myself a little bit. As someone who's read Stalin and Lenin, back in the day, Lenin describes fascism as quote unquote capitalism in decay. And so what I found interesting is, what does that have to do with anything what we're doing? India's economy is booming. It's one of the fastest growing economies in the world. India's in a great spot. What do you mean capitalism in decay? And so what you'll find is that they'll call you whatever pejorative, whatever bad name to make themselves, because they don't have an argument. So they'll just call you names. Name calling, people name call when they don't have an argument. So if you're genuinely trying to counter them in an argumentative sense, ask them to define what a fascist is. And they won't be able to do it. Yes, you're right. Fascists and nationalists are different. You know what's interesting? India, and what is different between a nationalist in India and America, just from my woke perspective, because I do have that woke background, quote unquote woke background, is that India, what makes me proud to be Bharatiya is that we are a group of people that overcame imperialism and colonialism. We overcame the chains of the British Empire, and before that, we overcame the chains of the Mughal Empire. We are a race of people. Bharatiya is a race of people who are born out of overcoming subjugation. And so when we are nationalists, we are nationalists, Bharatiya, an Indian nationalist, Hindu, we say our Hindu identity, our nationalist identity is born out of overcoming and resisting imperialism, colonialism, and conquest. And when we go back into ancient Indian history, was it William Durant who talks about how the Islamic conquest of India, one of the bloodiest aspects of India, we overcame that. Sanatani is still alive. To be Sanatani, that concept is still alive. And that is something to be proud of. That is not nationalism. I mean, that is nationalism, but that is anti-imperial nationalism, anti-colonial nationalism that will forever be tied to the land of India. So in that sense, nationalism is anti-imperialism. That is the words that I would use to counter that if they call you a nationalist. If they call you a fascist, ask them to define a fascist. They couldn't define it for you. For them, whoever they don't like is a fascist. You don't think if you're Hindu, you're a fascist. If you don't think Hinduism is fundamentally a fascist religion, you by definition are a fascist. They throw it out wherever they want. And the more they use that word, the more they undermine the meaning, from its historical Nazi and Mussolini context, then they demean the word. The word loses value over time. So let them.
Before we go to the next question, Sammy, if you could adjust your camera so that it's drifting a little bit away from you.
Am I here? This is better?
No, the other way. Here, let me center it. This way you know exactly how you need to
okay, there you go. This is better.
All right.
Yeah.
Great. Thank you. Now let's go to the next question, please. Research Champion wants to know, how can we support you from India and abroad, financially or otherwise?
Let me be honest. You don't need to. We got this. If your dharma is India, you need to fight for India.
Your karma bhumi is right there.
Exactly. Fight for India. Fight for Hindutva in India. Financially support organizations in India. I've seen the work that 𝙒𝙖𝙑𝙤 has been doing. Support his actions. Follow his lead. In your local community, start building Hindu pride. One thing that I want to do, and the projects I want to do here, is start teaching young Hindus, young students in India, wherever you are, whatever state you're in, teach them self-defense. Teach them the way of the spiritual warrior. Learn to engage in your scripture, but also, learn to self-defense. Be the warriors. One of the strongest stereotypes that we have in the West. Unfortunately, this is what I'm not going to say all. It's only the some. But again, enough. The Khalistanis and especially the Islamists in the West, when they are here, they love to point to us that we're weak. We're scrawny, weak bombers. Bombers is the word they Khalistanis love to use. To see bomber. So they love that stereotype. I want to combat that. I want to teach us. Teach your kids to start going to the gym. Become strong. Don't have that weak sort of stereotype. Don't let that go on.
Stereotypical,
yeah. Because when they see someone as weak, then they feel the need to bully us. And so that's what I would do. And also help your family. One of the also projects I want to do is the Hindu economy in the West, where no Hindu is financially struggling, because we are all one family. If anyone needs help, we're there to help them. And we want to make it okay and build that that parivar, that sense of family in the Hindu community in the West. And I think that's something you need to do in India as well, or it's being done. So the biggest
next question. Yeah. Go ahead.
Sure. The biggest enemies of Hindu students abroad are the Hinos, absolutely. Other so-called Hindu students, professors who are Hindu in name only, they do the biggest damage. Exactly. And so this is where this is really important. And so now we have our own litmus test, right? Yeah, I deal with these people all the time. I'm Hindu. We take away your Hindu card. I take my rights to take away your Hinduness. You're not Hindu anymore, you know. Especially if you're going against, and if you look at some of that stuff, people who are like, "Oh, I'm Hindu and I don't believe in Hinduphobia." Yeah, they're not really Hindu. You know, they're as Hindu as they need to be in order to hijack the name for nefarious purposes. So yeah, we take away their Hindu card. And so my new litmus test is: do you understand Bharat to be your matra and your punya bhumi? So to me, there is no Hindu without Hindutva, without Hinduness, without your understanding India as your matra and punya bhumi. And if you can do that, then I will agree that you're Hindu. But until then, you know, Hinos they're not Hindus. So there's no need for the word Hino. They're just British, you know, collaborators. They're colonial collaborators, you know, colonial bootlickers. Can I use that word, bootlicker? They further the projects of the colonial agenda against India and Hindus.
Baldev Mohar, how can the lower caste be proud of their last name when your religious treats them, you treat them worse than animals, and why don't you abolish it? I have an answer, but first I wanted to listen to you.
Where does our religion treat them anything? You know, we see the entire world as Atma. You know, Atma equals Brahman, right? All of these things are caste identities. They're all ego. Where's caste at all in the concept in Hindu scripture? We don't have any such concept of caste. Caste is a Portuguese word. So, you know, whatever your community is, there is a proud history that is to be uncovered in India. There's always pride in your ancestry. Every single human being that has ever lived in India has done something where their descendants can be proud of them. So, you know, I want to know what your answer is, Sriyaji.
Yeah, no worries. Viewers, I want you to go back and watch some of the videos that I did with Professor R. Vaidyanathan. When the British started taking census, that I think started in 1871, if I'm right, because that's when the British government took control of India, and they wanted to do a census. And when they started doing this census, they got lost trying to fit Indian names with what existed as a template in the West. There were 4 classes there, and that's how this caste, all these things came about. Now, what India used to have before all these things came along was you were identified from your village name, your father's name, and your name. Now, I'll give you an example. This exists even today. Sachin Ramesh Tendulkar, an iconic cricketer. Tendul was his village name. Ramesh was his father's name. Sachin is his name. This exists even today in many places in India where they could clearly say, this is my name. And that got noted down as census. But sometimes when these are all arbitrary people taking census. When they went about in the northern parts of India, because it's especially prevalent in the northern parts of India, when they could not say what was their family name, for example, then the guy asked, what's your caste name? And the guy said, okay, this is my caste name. That became their last name. You see, this is where this whole problem started. It never was that. Your name never said what caste you belong to.
Yeah.
This got completely, concretized in the way that it has become today because of the way the British conducted the census. They had some arbitrary rules. Initially, they came across 16,000 different castes, and they couldn't figure out how to, where to put what. And they didn't want to have like so many caste names because they thought that will give them more trouble. But they did understand that this is one stick that they could use to beat the Indians with. Just take picture this thought, guys. There were 22,000 white British men. and women, mostly men, who were ruling India. You want to take a guess about what the population was of Akhand Bharat? I'm talking from Attak to Cuttack. I'm not even looking at Myanmar, which was also British territory. It was many, many, many folds that population. The only way these 22,000 could survive there was to just keeping them divided. They found every fault line and they played it up. They were groups, they were organizations. You are seeing the DMK party today. That is an offshoot of what used to be called the Justice Party that was completely propped up by the British.
Yep.
I mean, any time I've also noticed when I've gone to some of these Dalit forums to try and explain this, they'll say, oh, here he comes. He wants me to read again. I mean, you have to read. What choice do you have? If you don't know what you are, like what Shani is saying, there are a lot of things every caste did. They were very specialist. In fact, the way that it is loosely mapped out is caste is what they call, this is your jati. You know what jati really is? Jati is a word that came from Vigyani. Vigyani over time, Vigyani means a scientist. Then it became Gyani. Gyani becomes a specialist. And Gyani was people who were having difficulty pronouncing it, so that became Jati. Jati was something that you were good at, your ancestors were good at, but that did not stop you from learning something else. The British put an end to the Gurukul system in 1830s because they said, unless we break this, we cannot really control India. Thank Lord Macaulay for this. You have to read the book by Dharampal, a beautiful tree, where British travelers that traveled the length and breadth of India during 1700s and 1800s, they wrote these articles, he compiled them and he put it out. Everybody had an equal choice at educating themselves, and you learned and you pursued whatever you want to do. Today, there are specialists who are not in a particular caste. This is very true, guys. Go ahead. You're going to say something, Sam.
Yeah, no, but you're saying in Dharampal's book, it said that lower caste, quote unquote, lower caste people were overrepresented in Gurukuls. In these Gurukuls.
Yes.
And so, what is this guy talking about? And this is the problem. I don't know where he's from, but this is the sort of this comment right here. I think is so important because it's a historical piece. What I'm reading right here, this is the lasting impact of the British Empire, and that you still have colonial agents or bootlickers or collaborators and propagators that will still hold the same message, even though, as you said, it's been thoroughly debunked, the idea of caste and jati. And in 2023, the fact that people can still link caste, which, we understand the word caste as a Portuguese concept to be birth-based, to varna and jati, which it doesn't take that long to read the Bhagavad Gita to know that it is guna karma, right? To know that these things are not correlated at all. And that, so we have the theological in theory, right? The theoretically in the theological basis that proves that it's not birth-based. Then we have, primary evidence in Dharampal's book that shows that it was never that case. And it was the destruction of the Gurukul system that led to a more rigid caste system. And then we have historical documents that prove this. So when you look at it throughout the different facets of evidence, you see that there is no linkage. And yet someone in 2023 still believes that there is some link, that a religion is treating people of caste. And to me, it's just, that to me shows that organized lies can beat out a disorganized truth, right? And so if you can organize your lies correctly, misconceptions like this can still propagate. And I think that's an important lesson for Hindus to understand. But yeah.
Sri Hegde, formerly Tony Stark. Why these woke people in US only target Hindus and Hinduism? Hindus are easy target?
Yes. Yes. We are an easy target. We don't fight back. It's like in our ethos and our nature to keep our head down and just, live the immigrant experience. We're very successful, and I think part of that success is that we don't cause too much problems. We let things happen. Now that's being used against us. And so we have historically been an easy target. You know what I've learned? I'm going to tell you something. what I've learned, especially with the way they talk about Hindus, you know, especially when they ask me questions. For example, let me take another group that, you know, often talks about their bigotry, and it's valid in the West, is Islam, Islamophobia. You know, they after 9/11, there were instances of genuine bigotry against all Muslims and all brown people. Even Hindus were persecuted around post 9/11. And you know, they, you know, now from those instances, they've created like an impenetrable shield. Now you can even critique Islam, right? And that's something that they've sort of forged over the course of the 20 years since then. We have not done that. And the sort of, what I say, political correctness that is afforded to all religions and races and ethnic groups, gender, that is not something that we take for to be taken for granted. That is something to be fought for. It's not handed to you. Respect, political correctness, and basic ethics of how you deal with a minority group is not handed to you, as it's often told from us. It is something that you have to fight for. And Hindus have yet to have that battle. And this is why I encourage Hindus to get into fields of politics, fields of law, in order to start being able to challenge the institutional systems to make sure that Hinduphobia becomes, you know, something that is deemed unacceptable. You can say things, you know, for example, you know, I saw that Rashmi Samant, she released her book. I think it was this week or yesterday or something like that.
Yes.
And you know, that professor who was standing against it, he admitted publicly to breaking idols. He buys, I don't know why he does this. He goes out of his way, supports a local Hindu business, buys a Saraswati idol just to break it, to prove a point. You can do something like that in Oxford and get away with it. You know, imagine if a professor burned a Quran and proudly did that. They would be ousted immediately. They wouldn't last 2 seconds doing that. But there's an exceptionalism to, and it's because the stereotype that we are we are meager, we are weak, and we won't do anything if someone says something about it. And so that's again why I encourage just the street credibility of being able to go, and I encourage you to just have that presence, an organizational presence and visual presence that we are not to be messed with. And I think that's something that we have to cultivate over time. So that's important. Don't make us the easy target.
Yeah. Last question, please. This is the last question. Technical Cyclist wants to know, what happens to those Hindu students who grow up with a left ideology in India and they go abroad for higher studies?
Yeah, they become successful. So yeah, they're pushed to the top the fastest. It's a good grift. Yeah, I mean, there's so many, you know, professors and top people who grow up with that left sort of ideology. Yeah, I think 𝙒𝙗 𝙤𝙬 is a very prominent example, right? He's like, he went to Harvard. He's a 𝗤𝙧𝙤𝘀𝘀. He spews misinformation like nobody's business. But he's taken very seriously. He's had a very successful career spewing misinformation. And I think that's you know, to me, that's one of the things. And people like to tell me that I'm a grifter. Oh, I left, you know, I stopped becoming a socialist. They think that I did it for some monetary value or some praise. There is no, and this is what I think is sort of beautiful with the struggle of Hindus globally. There is no ego in the work that we do. There's no 𝙒𝙀𝙀𝘀𝑎𝑛kar, because we will always most certainly be called fascist and nationalist, be called all sorts of names. We will be abused like Milanji was to the point of death. There is no ego in the work that Milanji did. He you know, sacrificed his life for this cause. And so you know, you won't find, you know, the same success. It is so easy for me. You know, I was a socialist. I could have made so much money throwing Hindus under the bus, calling them all sorts of names. I could have risen up the ranks in American left institutions as a socialist, as a former Hindu or something like that. But to me, dharma comes first. Duty comes first. I have a duty to my Hindu people. And it's not just me. I'm not trying to make this about myself. This is all of us. This is the work that 𝙒𝙖 𝙤𝙬𝙤𝙬 does. This is the work that so many Hindu Americans and Hindus across the world do. And so, and that's the struggle, and I'm proud of that struggle, that we have this path to go across. So
thank you so much, Sammy. And Jack Sparrow wants to know, historically, how have other communities and ethnicities fought bias? By getting organized, for sure.
These are great questions. What there's three things. I don't know if you had a chance of having 𝙒𝙧𝙤𝙪𝙥𝙥 on.
Oh yes, he was a regular in our channel until he got really busy.
Yeah. Oh, it's a good thing he's busy. That means there's work to be done. When they're not busy, that's when there's problems. He says there's just three facets. Politics, like political institutions, like politicians, elections, legal law, right? And then academia. These are the three facets in which information is disseminated. And so when we talk about bias in this information, these are the three spheres that we need to start having a greater presence in. For better, for worse, and sometimes it is a good thing too, and it has produced good results. Most of us are going into engineering and medicine, which is great. And honestly, continue doing that if that's your interest. But there are other fields that are the Hindus need to find presences, which is being in the legal field. I think is primary, in my opinion. First of all, I think you can convince your parents that you can become a lawyer. It's a good, lucrative field. But in that sense that challenging laws will be able to challenge legal institutions that hold the biases that you're describing. Then the second thing is academia. This one is a little bit difficult, but we have, this is because it's so safeguarded, is, where academia has taken place, there are a lot of anti-Hindus. And there's some, and I think Rajat Malhotra's number one fight is in this field. How do we challenge it in the academic institutions? But if we can have proud Hindus in academia who can tell a proper history of India, can bring up real historical sources that are buried in these places, like Dharamapal's book, like what you talked about, how the British had a hard time. I read that letter where the British, he was struggling to fit in Varna and caste together. It was impossible. This is the information that is buried. You're not allowed to talk about it in these institutions. So if we can bring those in by having proud Hindus bringing in these informations, then we can do that. And then finally, and this is honestly, I would say among these three are the least important, but still, a facet to look at is running for elections, holding positions in city councils, senatorial positions, gubernatorial, governorship, and then, so on and so forth, Congress, presidency. If we can have Hindus there, you're a voice to speak for them, right? And you have decisions in legislative and executive powers. So those are the three facets that I say Hindus need to start having a presence in. And when you can have your presence in, you will have the tools to fight against the biases that we're dealing with.
Thank you so much, Sammy. That was a wonderful session. Yeah. Viewers, those of you who have had a chance to watch this thing, please like, share, and subscribe to our channel. Do share Sammy's this video of his, because he's of your children's age. He is grown up in the United States. How many of us have had this kind of exposure or the feeling that there is something beyond what I'm being taught in my textbook, in my neighborhood, and in my environment? So he has taken that extra step to understand what it means to be a Sanatani. And I'm hoping that this video will change the minds and also make many more Sanatani warriors out there. Thanks once again, Sammy. I have no doubt in my mind that I'm going to have you back on our channel again and again as we take up some specific issues. And viewers, please like, share, and subscribe to our channel. Don't forget to click on the bell button for notification. Sammy's handles are at SammyVada in Twitter. And what is your handle in Instagram?
It's 𝙒𝙗𝙤𝙬𝙤, 𝙒𝙗𝙤𝙤.
The SammyVada in Instagram, because many of our children are very active on Instagram. You want to tell them, hey, listen, I know you want to listen, you watch all these things, but you may want to listen to another kid whose handle goes by the SammyVada. So please do follow him if you are on Instagram. There you go. And what can I say? It's a big revelation for me. I'm impressed, Sammy. We've had some conversations one-on-one. We've had some Twitter spaces, but this is a whole new you that I'm seeing. I hope my viewers agree with me. Do send in your comments and we will try to engage with you also. Namaskar.
Thank you so much.